Thanks, Felicia. Hi, guys. Happy Friday. It's good to see you. See all your smiling faces. It makes my day. So thanks so much for being here. We've got a fun class that's coming up. Oh, I see Sharon's holding up something she's got done already. Cool. Really fun class today, and kind of a versatile one without, really like a solid one project. There's a bunch of different projects that can come out of it. But the basic idea is all the cool stuff you can do with square stitch. So last week in our Friday class, we did the pendant earrings, which is that basic intro into the structure of a square stitch with everything from how to start it to how to do a decrease. And so that's the basics. But if you wanted to take it up to the next level and start doing round shapes and using different size seed beads, combining them in really unique ways. This is the design potential here is it's really staggering what you can do with this basic concept of being able to join one bead next to another one. And then there's just a lot of places you can take it. And so depending on, how much time we have, I'm hoping we can cover, since we've got the 2 hours, I hope we can cover not only what's here, but some bonus ideas that have come up since I wrote the first PDF. We've got a bonus pattern that we like to do bonus patterns for these classes. So we do have a bonus one for the earrings I'm wearing. That was just an idea that was hatched from these ideas. And I'm sure you guys will have even more of them, as you always do. And please share them with us at #JohnBead and #MakeItWithMichaels, and you can send them to us and in Messenger, Facebook groups, all that. So it's always great to see everything that you guys make. So the materials for this it's pretty open. It's a lot of our usual stuff. And so let me see what's going on here with my camera, because it seems fuzzy to me. How's that looking? Is that a little better, guys? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're good. I might lower it just a smidge. All right.
Just focusing, Danielle. I think you're
good.
It
was just focusing. Yeah, it's interesting. It hasn't done that before. All right. So well, what I've got here on the mat is the first demo, and I just went kind of crazy and was playing with colors and decided to make a rainbow theme, which is actually inspired by the earrings shape. And so I started getting out rainbow beads, and then ended up starting our first, sample like that. But the kind of things that we'll be using today are all the different kinds of seed beads. So I've got everything from size 11s to size 6s on the mat. We'll bring them in here and there as they're needed. It's all optional because this class will show you that you can use any bead you want to make these designs and to change it up. And I'm just going to be working with our usual, the Wildfire .006. I've got some scissors to cut it. I'm going to pull out some chain nose pliers. That's our usual way of making it easier to thread a needle. And so for the needles, you can work with either a 10 or a 12 or 11s even, but I'm probably going to be working with a 12. Just it's what I have handy, and it is easier to go through the 11s when I start using those. So I'll be working with one of those. And then towards the end, we may need some ear wires and some jump rings and some clasps. So just if you have a findings pack handy or anything like that, that can be super handy. The only other item that you might want to pull out is there's a 6mm bead on the bonus earring. And so these are the pearls from Michael's strand wall. The ones that come with like 4 different sizes, and there are strands bundled together. This is the 6mm put out shown there. Any 6mm round would work for that. All right, so I'm thinking I'll just introduce the first concept really quick, and then as always, chat is there. It's available to jump in, and Carmi and Millie are really awesome about asking questions, and I should have plenty of time to answer all of them, so feel free to jump in with that. But I thought I would start with showing a way that you can create additions to other types of work that you may have already created. And so what's shown here was our Wavy herringbone class. And we did this way back, like the first summer we were teaching with Michael's. And it's one of my favorite go-to things to create. And it's also a herringbone start, which we saw last week, but we saw it with just 8/0. Here's a herringbone start with a mix of, you can use 11/0 or 10/0, 8/0 and 6/0. And so I can show how this was started if anybody is not familiar with it, but you guys have been in all those classes and I think you recognize this, but give me a shout out if I'm wrong about that. And I'll go back and we'll build this. But what it is it's a herringbone stitch in a single column. And I built it in these little rainbow colors earlier today, up to about, a good demo point. And now I was going to show how to turn that into a 3-column design. And why this is handy and why you would be interested in knowing like how to do this for other designs is it can become a way to make gaps in your work. So for example, consider if you made 2 of these and you had them side by side, you could join them and then do a little, buttonhole in the center. It's a way to create shaping. So some of that next level beadwork you see where they have like a geometric shapes going on, square stitch is how they're doing it because it gives you all angles on the bead. Like you can build out north, south, east, and west on the bead. So the versatility of that is the appeal here. And I feel like this is like a really good concept demonstration of that. So that's why I chose building on this. And plus I just like making these because they're fun. So I'm going to grab those beads I set out earlier, and what you see here is a mix of a bunch of different colors. And I started with some size 10-0, 8-0, and 6-0, and they just taper up and down. I built those in that single column herringbone. And on this one, I've already got a needle ready to go. I threaded that earlier. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an entire new row here down the side using square. So just matching up the colors. Here's my 10-0 bead. Let's just go through. And just sit on the side like that. And you'll recognize that as pretty much exactly what we did in the class last week. And the cool thing about square is you can work square heading both directions. So sometimes you might be going through the work first and then adding the bead, or vice versa, and it works in both ways. And that's another really cool thing about the stitch in general. So that's all I'm doing is just picking up a bead and then going through the adjacent one. So you could just keep going. You could keep adding and make it wider if you wanted to. But I just felt like that was a really versatile way to expand on your work. And now it gives you a midpoint. A lot of people use this stitch to finish their loomed pieces. So for example, if you're working on a loom piece and you get off a loom and maybe it just isn't long enough, or you wanted to add, square stitch on a clasp, this is the way a lot of people do that. And I think I am working with a 10 there, but it was pretty tight. Okay. And so if anyone is curious about these rainbow colors, these are all from the strand, from the John Bead Czech seed bead wall at Michael's. And this little color combination that I put together, I can give you all of the SKUs for them. If you're interested, just let me know. You can message me, or I meant to put it together before class, but had the idea like maybe 15 minutes beforehand. And I just started grabbing seed bead tubes. And so I can put that together for you. I have them right next to me.
Danielle, when you do the next one, can you tell me your steps, your passes?
Yeah. So I came out of the 6-0, and I'm going to go ahead and bring on the next bead in the line, which is the 8-0. And I want it to sit next to this 8-0 bead, the one that's right here. So to do that, I'm just going to hug it. And by hug it, I mean I'm going to go through that bead in one direction, then come out the other, and go back through the bead next to it, headed in the opposite direction. So going through that one and pulling tight. And it's got a little tilt to it. It's kind of wonky looking, but when you come back through it, so just going through that bead, I'm going to tighten it up on the bottom. And one thing you might want to watch for is when you're coming down in size, meaning you're tapering down, it's going to catch on the bigger bead above it. So just help your loop Help your loop come down. Use your thumbnail to tighten it. And then it'll just sit right there, and every bead you add below it will give it stability. And so it seems like a really, you know, just maybe the long way of doing something. But if you found yourself in a situation where you're trying to finish a piece or create an extra edge on something, this is the way to do it.
Danielle, Sharon saying it's a great way to widen the bracelet if the wearer grows like her granddaughter.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is true. Because you can always just add one every year, and it could become a cuff that way. And so this design it's an old tried and true. It's one that I have done before, and I add focals this way. So in some of our, I'm trying to think of a class where we did one with a focal, and I believe we've done several, but what I did is I would have like a focal here, and then the ability to take these sides and have them go around and then join again above it. That's where this really becomes a super useful tool in your beading toolbox, because if you had something where you wanted to dance the sides around, you could embellish it with crystals, you could embellish it with all different kinds of beads, and just knowing how to, you know, branch out and then come back. That's one of the things that I think is super useful about this. And if anyone's interested, I can probably dig up a bunch of links for you to examples of what I'm talking about. And I know I've done at least a couple myself that I have step-by-step out and that I have PDFs for. So this is just the basic thing you would need to know in order to do those patterns. They're just they're just a little bit more advanced, but they're like everything I do, they're truly, truly easy. They're just, if you just break them down into their pieces, like this is one of those pieces, and then you see, oh yeah, that is super easy. And it's actually even a natural progression of the idea that would occur to everyone sitting there with those beads in front of them. I found that to be the case, at least. And so I can keep going with this one unless if you guys are feeling like you totally understand it. And the only step at the end that I haven't shown you is the reinforcing. It's a lot less noticeable on this one. I feel like on this one you could get away with not doing it, but typically what you do is you'd get to the end and you would come all the way up through this center row of beads, and you would turn and come all the way down. Just give it that one last little stability lock in. And a size 12 beading needle comes in handy there because it gets really tight going through. Because at that point, you'll have gone through the beads in the center. It would be like a fourth pass. So a size 12 recommended. But that's one way you could use this stitch to do something really amazing. How's everyone feeling about that? Is it I can finish it, or we can jump into the circle, making the circle? You're good. Okay, I see Pat saying thumbs up, so I'm gonna jump forward. All right.
Danielle, you call that the wavy bracelet?
Yeah, this is our wavy herringbone. We did way back in like 2020, summer of 2020, we did a stacker. It was 3, and it had a little leather tassel on it, like a deerskin lace tassel.
Yep.
And we joined it with, we put a wire guardian on the ends, and we joined it with a jump ring to the clasp and the leather. And it was just a really fun one. We got a lot of really great, posts when we did that class. People did some amazing work. And so this is just that class with this edge built on it. It was a wavy herringbone. Super fun. And so that's just one idea. And then I started to play with shapes. So let me show you this one. I've got it pinned on my board over here. This can become a lot of things. And you don't have to use the counts that I used. I started with 9 in my center. You could start it with any number that you'd like. And you could also make, them connect by joining and sharing a bead on the side. You could share one of those 8/0 beads. You can make these with different size beads. The only thing I found was if it's important to you to keep it flat, when you get to your third row, the bead in between each bead has to become smaller than the ones before it. So at some point you're going to reach a situation where there's nothing smaller than a 15. Well, maybe there is. I don't know if I should know that, but you would have to start getting very, very tiny. Or you could start with some 6/0s and it would give you a little bit more, ways to taper it down. But so let's build this one as it's shown here and as it's diagrammed, because I think that the concept will come through that way and it'll spark all the ideas for you guys. So let's see, for colors, I'm going to go ahead and use, I'm just going to start with, all we're going to need now is, I'm going to work with 3 different colors of 8/0. So I just need to grab a couple of those. I'm going to go with our tried and true colors there. And I'll pull in an 11 right at the end to make the edge. Let's start with the center, start with the red here. And you don't need too much thread, maybe like 30 inches or even less, it'll be fine. I'm gonna flatten that down. I'm just going to grab a needle here. All of my needles are bent. I've been working very roughly with them, I guess. There we go. I'm just going to fold that over a little bit so I can hold on to it. All right, and so let's pick up 9 of our size 8 seed beads. Let me back it there. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 9. But again, this ring, the ones that I'm picking up right now, they're going to form that circle. And this is a really stable count, the 9. But if you made it bigger, just know that you'd have a bigger circle in the center. And the kind of things you could do with that are, for example, you could twine beading wire or leather going in both directions through it, kind of like an infinity stringing, and then they would sit on a necklace facing forward like that. You have to make a bunch of them, but you can make a bunch of different colors. And so in addition to joining them, you could just use them as like a beaded element. So I'm going to get 9 on the needle and go back through them. So just going back through all 9 of those, and I'm going to pull them into a ring. Starting to form a circle here. Going back through the first one.
Danielle, Sharon thinks you only have 8 there.
Oh, do I believe Sharon. Sharon's right. Let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, true. Well, so I can stick with the counts. I'll go back and change that. It would still work, but I want it to look exactly like my last one. So let's go back. Thanks, Sharon. All right, we need 1 more. And I'm going to go back through all of them. And pull that into a ring. Go back through the first one, or first 2. And so with this one, you can reinforce it by going around just one more time. And if you're having any like loose, beads not staying, this is another way to fix that. So I always just kind of take the time to do that. It also makes it rounder, the shape, because it's back to that concept that I heard Meredith at Beadle on share once about fitting the most you can in the beads will actually stabilize them, and they'll look like the shape will take a better form. So there's my first ring. And now I'm going to start building on with another color. So let's grab the next one. And all I have to do is add a size 8 seed bead next to each one as I go around. So this is just the most basic form of, you know, doing a round square stitch. You can change up the sizes and it starts getting, the counts start getting complicated, but they're not too complicated. If you know what I mean? They're, once you have the concept down, you'd be able to figure it out as you go. But for now, I'm just going to stick with adding the same size bead. And so when you pick up the new bead, you go back through the one you're exiting, heading in the opposite direction of the thread that's coming out. And then I always just on the same pass, I'll just continue to the next one because I know that's where I want to go. That's where I'm heading. I'm going to add my next bead after that. And you're going to get a really cool looking little like sunshine shape. So there's my new 8. Just going to go back through the first one, or the one I'm exiting. And if possible, continuing through the next one in the ring. And pull tight. And don't worry right now if they're spiraling downward. See how they're kind of, they're not sitting exactly parallel. They're tilting. That's going to fix when we add the next ring. So don't worry too much about that. That's a natural way for it to look. Just make it as tight as you can. So give it a good bit of tension there. And I often use my nail to pull it. Back through. And we'll just keep going all the way around. I think it looks like a little sunshine. It always makes me pretty happy. Okay, last one. And I'm going to go back through the first one in the ring. And so I should get a bead sitting next to every bead in my circle. If your first ring starts getting loose on you, just go ahead and pull the working a tail thread apart. And that should tighten it up really nicely. And you'll have something that looks like that. And the row around it's wonky. It's missing its joined pieces, but we're going to add those next. First thing we'll have to do is step up. And so to do that, you're exiting from a red bead here. Just go ahead and come up through the blue bead we added. Just turn and go through it. So you'll be heading in the opposite direction that you were before. And if you'd like to switch colors here so it really stands out, you can switch to another color or stick with the same one. What will happen if you change colors is you'll have a different color in between each one. If you wanted your second ring to be a solid color, which is what I did on my earrings here, let me show you really quick. You would need to make your B and C beads the same beads. And this ring is, we joined B and then we fill it in with C. So if you make it at the same color, you'll get the same color ring, or you can make it a rainbow like I did, where you've got a dark and a light color, just kind of dancing around in there. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm switching it. Sticking with size 8 though, the 80 seed beads. We have not changed sizes yet. So there's the first one. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pick up a size 8 bead and fill in by going through the next blue 8 all the way around. So these are my C beads and those are my B beads if you're following the handout as they're described in there. And these go really fast too. They don't take that long to make. Something that I just joined a little bead club of just other beaders where we just sit around and chat while we stitch stuff. And we decided to make a design that incorporates a piece made by every person in the group. And so I have to make a bunch of these, and I'm going to make, this is the one I've chosen to do. I'm going to do these circles because they're quick and they feel like me because they're seed beaded, and they'll all become part of like one piece of jewelry. they're just gonna put together. I don't know if you guys have ever tried those. They're not really like bead swaps, they're more like, you know, component swaps that you made the component. This is a great one for something like that. There we go. And so there's another little circle on top of that one. And you can already see how versatile this just by itself is, what you could do with something like this, all the things you could turn this into. I've even seen amazing designs where they use these as spacers, like little daisy spacers. They string them, make it a little smaller than a 9-start, right? But they string them like this. And then in the next row, there would be like drops coming out, all crazy drops, and then string it with a big 8mm bead in between, or even a 10mm for like a really cool chunky bracelet. This becomes like a bunch of stuff. And you can shape it. One of the ways you can shape it is the next step we're going to do. You can change up the size of the beads, maybe some 6s down to some 11s to 6s, and you would get a flower, right? As you go around. So, but if you wanted just to keep that circle shape going and you want it not to change, I'm going to grab a 4th color of 80. And now I need a size 11 because I'm going to have to fill in with something that'll keep it flat. So let me find, I'm going to bring in these blue 11s. Let's get those going. Okay. So same thing we did before. We're just going to use a new color. And it's going to be a little bit longer to go around because we're going to have to add a seed bead, an 80 bead to every single one. So here's my first one. I feel like that color is not bright enough. Let's see here. Sorry about that. We're just not going to be able to see that color. It's much more pink to my eye here on the mat than it looks on the screen to me. That's going to be better. There we go. Okay. So I've got a new size 8 seed bead exiting from this one here. I'm going to turn and go through it. Continue through the next one. So same thing we did before. It does look like it's going in the different direction because every time you change, orbits, I guess. Every time you change orbits, you're changing direction. And something else you can do at that last step is you can go through all the beads again, which I didn't do because I felt like my tension was really nice and it didn't seem to need it. But if you wanted to, you could keep going all around through those and just get it tightened up a little bit. Be careful when you're tightening them though, that the tension doesn't get too crazy because what will happen is it will start to bowl. And that is something you can get this to do if you use the right tension or you play with the sizing, is you can get it to scallop down into like a bowl shape. So happens with changing sizes, it happens actually by accident if you pull too tight. So just keeping it, what I'm doing actually as I'm stitching these is I'm using my fingers to pancake them, like to press them. That way, no matter how hard I pull with my working thread, I'm not going to bow it inward too badly. But if I was to not do that, it is possible to bow it in. See how it's starting to kind of, so just, something to think about while you're stitching. I'm just doing this and go through the next one. I actually thought about teaching a design that was a bowl shape, but what I discovered was my results weren't consistent 100% of the time. And if I couldn't repeat it, I got worried. So I've been actually kind of trying to read up and find out how to stabilize that. And if I figure it out, I will share. But every once in a while, I get one that just works. And I'm like, wow, why did that work? I don't know why it worked. The mystery.
Danielle, while you're working, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you have to start with a size 80 seed beads?
Nope. No.
Can you start with 60 or maybe use 60 throughout the whole design?
You can, yeah. What you'll run into after row 2, when you start row 3, is you'll need a smaller bead in between. So I'm going to finish this with the 8s, and then the next thing I'm going to have to do is come around and add 11s in between. You can add a larger bead here, but what will happen is it will start to wave. It won't stay flat anymore. So that's the only reason to change the size down in row 3. But other than that, there really is no reason you can't use any bead you want, any size bead you want. And it will certainly work out to row 2. No matter what size bead you choose, you can use the same size and you'll get this first ring and second ring looking like that. It's at this part, and I'll show you what I mean once I get to the end of this round. We can play with that and I'll show you exactly what it'll do. So that might be neat to see. And I'm just assuming everybody's got this part where I'm adding the bead, but let me know if I'm going too fast.
I'm watching Danielle, and everyone knows I'm a new beader as well. So I understand now what the square stitch is. You're just going around.
Yeah, it's basically just hugging the bead next to it with a new bead. And that concept works for so many different things. Also works for doing like a multi-strand. A lot of the times that I read like, you know, the published magazines where they do like the really exquisite seed bead art, they're using the terminology of what stitch they used. And sometimes I'll look at that and I'm like, that's square stitch? No, because it looks like peyote or something, but it all has to do with the way that you joined it, right? And so that's what I was so interested in trying to communicate with these projects. Was just how many different things are square. And so there's that ring. That is the 8 O's, the last 8 O's that I can add. But let's play for a second. Let me show you what happens if you don't size down. You can always pull it out. So here's another 8 O seed bead. And, you know, same as before, we're going to just add it in between each one. It's going to work for a minute. And then it's going to start to not work anymore. It's going to start to make the shape 3D in a really wonky way. So it's starting now. But of course, maybe that's a look that works for your design. So don't ever say, you know, no, I can't do that, or I have to size it down. You absolutely could do whatever you'd like, and it would work for, you know, it will just kind of look like a Pringle or a potato chip in shape. So now my beads have stopped fitting. See how they're kind of starting to do this wave? You see the little, or one's up and one's down. What eventually you get when you do this is a potato chip shape, or like literally like a Pringle. It will look like a Pringle. Less oval shape, but where it will start to move like that. So what I did instead to keep my design flat, which was totally just a design choice, and there's no other reason than that to have done it, was I sized down to an 11-0, and it stayed completely flat at that point. Let me see how many far back I can get. There we go. I'm being cheeky, seeing if I can get it to work without taking my needle off, because I don't want to restring it. But
Danielle, I would have done the same thing. We're all nodding with you.
I always try, and even though I know it's not going to work, it's just like I'm in denial.
Cindy's wondering if you can switch to peyote.
From here? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So here's what will happen when you, depending on the bead you put inside this beads, it's going to have to be about the width of an 11-0. You might be able to do a 10-0, but what if you had a disc bead or a demi round? Have you seen like those, like if you sized up to like one of the O beads, the Czech O beads, it got those in between. Now all of a sudden you've got an up bead because they're so tall, but they're thin enough that they're not going to change your flat structure. So
Sharon's nodding her head. I think she has O beads.
O beads, yeah. If you got them, try them. I would love to see those, you know, in a design. So that would be very, very cool to see. I don't play with those nearly as much anymore. I used to use them a lot.
So Danielle, just to reinforce what you just said for myself and any other newbie that's in the room, is you're now using a smaller size bead so that you can keep your design flat.
Yeah, and it was totally just a choice, and it doesn't have to be flat.
So those of us who like wonky can try any size bead here, just go crazy.
Exactly. But if you use an 11, at least in this, this experiment here, you'll get a flat design. And this is the last little round, right? This is the last one that I designed out for this particular project. But if you wanted to keep going, you can. You can keep adding more and more rings to it. I just really liked this. It was kind of a maybe just that Goldilocks, size for different types of applications. Like it makes a great pendant. And I kind of want to see it as an earring with a little charm. The other thing that's cool is it has the ability to become connected. If you replace any of these outer beads with something like either a jump ring, charm, or what I like to call sharing a bead, which is so instead of adding a new 8-0, I could have joined it to the 8-0 on one of my previous pieces, right? And they would all just connect to each other. And the only tricky part is when you're doing your loop around, you have to decide, are you going to have 2 11-0s on the bead that's shared or one? In which case you have to share the 11-0s as well. So just as you're joining those, you'll know what I mean as you start working that.
And Danielle, you always start with an odd number of beads?
You know what? You don't have to. You can start with any count. I'm not sure why I started with 9. I think I was trying to fit it around something. Sometimes when I'm making up ideas for the classes, I get an idea that came from another idea that didn't work. This originally, I was trying to put a bead in the center. And I was trying to put a little 6mm bead as the center, and I was going to make a Saturn. And then I was going to join it through the ends here. But what I ended up having is empty poles, and it just looked like 2 tacos on either side of the bead, which could be cool. It depends, but it didn't light me up. So I changed it. And then as I was sitting here looking at it, I'm like, hey, that's actually by itself really cool. Better than my Saturn taco, which I demolished. Sorry, I wish I had that to share. I promise I'll bring some bloopers in the future. Instead of dismantling them, I should just keep them and share them. But the beads, I always recycle my beads. I pull them off and use them again. I'm kind of proud of that actually. So some of these seed beads, like I've been doing classes now for, we just submitted, what was it, 70? I've lost count. We've done a lot of them. I've been working with the same 3 sets. I haven't bought more because I recycle them. I take them and use them again, which I should, just save my bloopers so you guys can see them. But I'd be going through tubes like every month. I'd be replacing all of them. But yeah, look at that. That's pretty much the general idea. And then all you'd have to do to weave in is just follow your thread path around. And I usually go through a few beads, and then I like to do my turns on my 8. So my 8 is connected to this one. So now I'm going to step down and head on around a few beads on this one. And then from here, it's my blue beads that are connected to my reds. So I'm going through a blue bead here. It's one of my B beads. Go back through an A bead. And back where I started. And this is pretty much good. I could trim it now. I could keep going a little bit, but 3 turns locks in your stitch really nicely, and your thread shouldn't come unraveled. It should be pretty good after 3 turns. I think I did like 5 or even 6 turns. Go ahead and trim it. You can always burn that if you've got a little burner. But yeah, there's a circle. I hope that you guys are having ideas. You're seeing this and you're like, I could do this, I could do that.
Danielle, if you just fall in love with the circle and wanted to turn it into earrings, would you would you put a jump ring on right now? Marguerite would like to know.
Yeah, all I did, and I didn't even have to replace any beads because my jump ring fit in between the orbits there. I just put it, so when we're joining the 11-0, as you go through your 11-0 and add it, go through a jump ring. So pick up an 11-0, go through a jump ring, and then go through your 8. And it'll just lock it underneath that 11-0. I don't know if you can see very well, but that jump ring is sitting underneath an 11-0 because there's no thread for it to interfere with there. The thread that joins the beads is connected from the 2 8s. So that 11-0 is suspended in space with the thread going through it in this direction. Perfect place for a jump ring. You could put a jump ring here and at the bottom, put a charm. I wanted to do one with an air wire here and a little charm at the bottom. Really cute. And of course you could just join them as a necklace too. You could just a bunch of them. Boom, 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 boom.
And Danielle, just before we leave the circle, if you were going to expand the circle and go beyond rows 3, 4, is it still best to switch between alternate bead sizes, 8 and 11?
Yeah, and what I found when I started to do that was you had to start skipping beads. So what I mean by that, coming back to the one that's easier to see, what we've been doing, our convention this whole time, is we've been adding a new bead onto every single bead. We did that with this one and it doubled the number of beads here. We did that. When you get to this one, for one more row, you could join all the 8s with another 8, and that would still work. And then you would put a smaller bead in between. But then when you get out here, you would have to join every other bead or start playing with the sizes. And it got to where you would need to really experiment with it. And it's possible, but it's something that I just would need to do a pattern for. Like I would have to do a serious pattern for it. And you would have to know this is row 4 and row 4 has add a bead, skip 2 beads, add a bead, skip 2. Kind of like when we did our peyote one. Remember how we had ones where we had to put 2 in the space and then ones you had to put 1 in the space. Because really what we're doing here is increasing. And the increased, and if it's important to you that it stay flat, there's some math in there. But yeah, the short answer is totally, it will work and it will work great. You just have to play with the count.
Brittany thanks you for the extra info.
Cool. And if you do it, please share it with me because I have not mapped it. And so I'll count the beads on your design. So yeah, so that one is the circle. And then from there, I was like, well, hey, I want to make a half moon because a crescent shape is a really fun shape to make. And it can become a lot of stuff. And so this was the original. This is almost a blooper, I feel like. It was a concept. But I thought since we're in spring and somebody might be interested in putting a little like maybe bunny rabbit bead or something, it could become, or like an egg. It looks a little bit like a basket. And so that's why I decided to include it. Even though it's, it's just kind of a little bit oddball, but it's cute. It's got some potential. But what I thought after that was, well, what if I turn it and I used it as a like fringe, way to base fringe off of. And so that's how this design was born. So it can become a base for a fringe earring. And then I just replaced the bugle with a 6mm bead. And so that's the bonus pattern that we added in the chat earlier. And it's one of the things that I thought of, but it's not the only thing that I thought of. You could do a lot more here still. There's a lot of just low-hanging bead fruit that you can find ideas from just this. So I thought what we would do is I'll build it like it is here. So you can see how to build the basket. And then I believe from there, the earring will totally make sense, but I think we're doing so well, I can show it both.
I agree, Danielle.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and let's do the basket really quick. And so I'm going to grab a bugle bead. I need to grab any color will do. I'm going to go with this really pretty blue. And I think I have all the other beads I need already out here on the mat. So just in general, at the moment, we're just going to need bugles in size 8s, and then we'll start needing some 11s after that. So bugle 8s and 11s and some new thread. And so for this one, you're going to need a little bit more length, but not too much, nothing too crazy, just maybe like, I think 40 inches would be plenty. If you were doing the fringe earring, you're going to need more. but this will work for the basket. Like 40 inches would be plenty, probably more than enough. And I'm gonna get my needle here. And then just fold it down like we did on the last view. Just give it a good fold. And then I am going to bring the diagram out just really quick so I can show what's different between the circle, because we really are recreating the circle and just doing half of it. But see, it's the same steps. We're going to string on our bugle. And these counts again were, they were kind of what I thought looked good next to a 6mm space. So the space right here, that's 6mm wide, roughly. And so I thought adding the 5 was a good, this is size 8 beads. Adding 5 size 8 beads was a nice crescent. But of course, you are not stuck with that. You can try adding an extra one and see if you get a fuller, rounder circle. On the earring, it becomes really apparent that they kind of pull upward. See those 5 8-0s? It does kind of give you an arc. So you could get away with putting maybe 6 or even 7. So play with that. I'm going to stick with what's here, but I just wanted to make sure and mention you weren't stuck with those counts. So I'm going to string 5, the bugle, and then I'm going to string 5 beads, and I'm going to reinforce that. And then from there, it's actually really the same thing we did for the round. So here's my bugle. And then let's add the 5, making sure I actually have 5. Yay. And the tail that you need isn't much, just enough to weave in, so 7 inches or so. You'll get something that looks like that, which by the way is just super cute by itself. Can you imagine just stringing that as a bracelet? You put a spacer bead, another bugle, go around it, spacer bead. There's a design right there. And I like those colors too, so it's kind of cute. So I'm gonna go around this. It is super loose right now, so just reinforcing is key for this design. So there's our start. Come through the first size 8. And I will switch colors for clarity, but you don't have to. You can make it all one color. I'm picking up a new size 8 and going through in the other direction, the same bead that I'm exiting. So there's that little hug. And I'm going to do the same thing through the next 4. And then I'll try to tighten it up at the end. There's one more. And if it'll let you get through the next bead on one swoop, that's great. It doesn't always let me do that. It seems to be working right now, but it doesn't always work. There's that, and the next one. All right. So we've got a bead joined to every one of those beads. I'm going to go back through. Sorry, I just want to tighten that. I'm going to go back through the center here just one time, and it's only to tighten it really, but if you feel like you don't need it, don't worry about it, but I feel like mine needs it. So a little more wobbly than I was hoping. So all I did is I went through the bugle, and I'm just doing a reinforcing pass through all my 8s, and that's optional. I just want it to be a little bit tight because I want it to have structure. So that's why I went through it one more time. And now we're going to go through the new 8 that we added. And you're going to need to add another 8. So picking up 1 8-0 and going through the next 8-0. There's that one. Okay, so we've got a little fan going here. And then go through, if you can get through it. I went through it a lot of times, but I'm going to go back through that first ring and then back through this one again, just to make it extra strong. But again, that's optional. I didn't do it on my circle, and I did do it on the crescent. And I think it's just because the crescent has to hold its shape without the help of being, you know, supported by the rest of the round. And there, that looks a lot better. See, it went right back into it popped better. I'm switching colors again. I'm still working with a size 8 seed bead. I just switched colors, and I'm going to hug this next bead here, hug all the beads. Oops, I dropped my 8 there. Just coming through the next one. And it's pretty tight, but I did that on purpose so that it would be, you know, really solidly holding its shape there, but it's making it a little tricky for me to get my needle through. So it's got to kind of focus on it a little bit. The yellow is easier than the blue because it's the free floating one. You get through those a lot easier. Well, this is super cute right here. I mean, you could just put the jump ring on that and it could become an earring. Another thing I wish I'd thought of that I just thought of now is if I change the shapes, if I change the sizes of these beads for the next row, I could have made kind of like a ruffle or a scallop. Too many ideas. Almost to the last one. Here's the last one. And so there's another round added, and it's got a little tiny gap here in between each one where we can add our 11s. And so I'm going to go back through this row. This is the row 2 here, just to kind of get where I need to be, right? So I'm going to travel through those. Oops. I hit my camera, but I didn't make anyone dizzy. All right, so I've gone through all those. I'm going to turn, go through that first 8, and I'm going to pick up an 11, go through the next 8. Same thing we did before there. So we're still kind of copying what we did on the circle. We haven't done anything different yet, except for we've only worked half of it. And my tension on this one was really tight. So it's like getting the beads between them. And I'm going to pull a little bit harder than I did before.
Danielle, I have to say, I'm loving the shape.
The crescent.
Yeah, it almost looks like a basket of flowers when you show it that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really cute. And I feel like it could be even a seashell too. You know, I would love to see that as in like a shell design with a bunch of shell beads. And so I'm already thinking of summer. But so there's that round done. And even there, you could stop there. That is where the circle stopped. But we're going to add just one more round because the reason that this looks a little fuller is there's an extra addition on it. And so this might actually be something cool to answer the question from earlier about adding on, because we are going to add an extra row, same way we did before. Let me bring up the diagram so I can explain that a little bit better. So we did that, and we added all these littles, and then now you can just do this extra part here. So for the basket, oh, and I did something where I did some brick stitch here. And the reason I did the brick stitch is because it made it flatter at the top, because I was trying to make this part flat. So I was just trying to fill it in more. But it's totally optional. Anything that you want to do there is just great. So. But you would start going from where I am here. You would start traveling all the way up to build the basket. So let's build our top of our basket. So it's 8 and 11s. And I think I started with an 8 and then I did 3 11s, but this pattern again is just whatever you like. You can do it, any design that you like.
And Danielle, the basket doesn't have to be as high or as tall.
No, it could be either way, whatever you like to do with your design. It's just so versatile from here. I feel like you can do a lot of great stuff with it. And I switched back to my original colors here, but you can always change that up too. And I might just go with that. I like that. And so there's a little basket there. You could also make it one wider by joining an 8 to each of the 8s and then putting an 8 in between. I found that worked on one of my other designs, but it's totally up to you what you like. From here, what I did is I started to reinforce. So we just went all the way around here. So what we did is we just stitched all the way up here, added those. Now we're here, but I want to go through and turn so I can get up here and work. And I want to work some 11 O's, brick stitch them on, go through here, brick stitch on that side, just for evening it out. And it's optional. If you like it, you do that. And if you don't, then don't worry about it, because you don't really need it. I think what I was going for was to make my beads the same height as my bugle. But what I could also have done is maybe made this, instead of starting with 5, I could have started with 7. And I believe that would make these beads reach this height, and you would just have a taller basket. It would be less scalloped like a shell, and it would come out flatter. So if you play with that, you will get a different result than what I'm showing here. You can also change that up. I like to do my brick stitch from behind. So what I did is I picked up 2 size 11 beads. And again, I was over here and I traveled down through this one and I came up through that one. So now I'm sitting on top of the basket here. This is also a great way to add other elements. Like you could put a Czech glass flower, you could put a little bead that's like an egg, just by doing like almost like an anemone stitch where you come up, grab a little bead, come back down through it. But what I ended up doing here is going through the thread bridges and then just joining them like this. And however many will fit. I think on one of my designs, I had an extra row, so I was able to get as many as 4. But on the handout, I'm showing 4, but I feel like 2 fits better. I did so many versions that you can see there's just so much variability you can come up with. I like the look of 3, maybe. Let's see what we think. So yeah, just something like that. It's kind of cute. And then I would come back down through the one next to it. Go through my bugle. You know, actually my bugle's got so much passes through it that it's very tight and I can't get through it. I'm going to go through these to get around to the other side. So that happens to you. You can always just travel this way. It was that reinforcing step I did that made it really tight. All right, there we go. 2 more of my 11s. Oops, that's not gonna work. I have to go back this way. I'm on the wrong side.
Danielle, do you think you could use your tail?
Yeah, I could. I just traveled over here trying to at least follow some of that original thread path, but at the tail might have been a smarter way to do it, I think. I wish I'd thought of that originally, because that would be better. Then you don't have to worry about getting through those beads anymore. It does get really tight after that last pass. I think I just get one more on there and it will be symmetrical with the other side. And then we could call that a cute little basket. And so there's, I just kind of joined them with 11 O's there. And I was only able to fit 3. My original design, I was able to fit 4. I think I went out an extra row on my original. But from here, what I would do is I would just come back down through the adjacent 11 and I would start weaving in. Also, you might want to reinforce this up here. So to get to that, if you're where I am coming out of this last 11, just go back down through this one. And then continue through the 8 that's below it. And then turn through your red one here, the red 8-0. And continue up the side of that. Next 8-0, where's that? Well, I was only able to get through 1, so I'll just keep going this way. There we go. And I would just keep going all the way around the other side. And then you can, if you want to do some knots, you can do them down here and go through a bead. You can also add on another row here and then do your basket top. So many things. I hope that inspired an idea or two out there. That's like a little mini basket.
Danielle, that was perfect. Your timing is great.
Is it good? Okay, good. Yay. We're doing
I'm going to recommend that everyone have a 2-minute comfort break. Either grab a glass of water or have a quick break while you get ready to set up the bonus earrings.
Yeah. I might work them in these colors that are out here. So they seem easy to see. Pull this one here.
Okay, so we won't do anything for 2 minutes.
Yeah, we will stop. I'm just gonna maybe clean up these piles. Let's see, do I need anything else that I don't have?
Danielle, as you're setting up for the bonus earrings, could you just, could you tell us the sizes that you're putting out? Sizes of beads.
Yeah, I've got 11O seed beads and 8O seed beads in a bunch of different colors. So the same ones I had out before. And I'm not going to work them in the, so my original sample was the apricot, but it's hard to see, I feel like.
So will you use a 6mm bead in the center?
Yeah, and that would be the only change from before, is just to switch the bugle, switching that bugle for a 6mm.
Okay. I hope everyone had a chance to just get a glass of water or have a quick break. Danielle, you have some water?
I did, yeah.
Okay, good. I'll let you start whenever you're ready.
Okay, yeah, if everyone's back. Oh, I see Valerie's got the pattern printed already. How cool. Awesome. All right, well, I'll go ahead and dive in. I think everyone's, I don't see Pat back yet, but we'll go just a little slow here in the beginning. All right, so I've got a new strand. And with this one, so the amount of thread you're going to cut is really dependent on how much fringe length you want to go for. I think for mine, 60 inches was plenty because I got way to the end and I had a lot left for weaving in. So whatever you think for your length, my fringe is, let's see how tall my fringe is. It's only about 1.5 inches. So this is a pretty small earring. It's not too big. If you wanted to go with more, I'm kind of just guessing you're going to have extra, but about an extra 10 inches will get you another maybe, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch on each of these strands, with lots of room to spare for weaving in and getting around. You have to kind of travel up a little bit to get the fringe added, and so I'm adding on a little extra there, but that should be plenty. But if you start with these counts, you'll have about 60 inches of thread. You'll get there, and then you'll have a good idea of how to guesstimate your next one. So that's how much I cut. And then I'm just threading my beading needle. Again, I'm working with a 12, which is a little tight to thread, but worth it because it'll get through my beads. Especially with fringe, I tend to go with a 12 if I'm doing fringe. I don't know about you guys, but going back through, it just seems easier. But I do think the other size of needle will work. And so just like we did before, we're just going to go through our bead. This was a bugle last time. We're just going to go through the 6mm bead and the string the 5. And we're going to build it out. So all these steps are kind of like a repeat of what we just did. And then I'll show you building on the fringe and attaching an ear wire attachment. Okay, so let's go through our 6mm bead. And then another tip that I got from another beader that does really beautiful fringe designs is if you were going to start doing something like really long, like lots of super long fringe, and you don't want to work with a huge amount of working thread or add thread later, you can leave a really, really long tail over here and bring that down and build fringe with it later. So that's something to think about if you're going to build a lot. For this design, I'm going to stick with just a normal tail because I'll have enough working thread to work through it. So this is just enough to weave in at the end. Here's my 5 seed beads. These are size 8. I got 5 of those. Go around. And they'll just kind of sit like that on the side of the bead. Now reinforce it. And that seems like it's pretty good. If you get, as we're working our next rows, if you notice that it's getting loose, you can always tighten it by pulling on the tail thread. And then if you end up like feeling like it's just not staying in place, go ahead and go through it just even a 3rd time. Either of those will work. I'm going to see how 2 does. I think 2 is what I did originally. And so I'm going to go through my first size 8. And just same as before, I want to add on another 8 to it. And go through the next bead after that. These pearls are so pretty. They have like a little marbly finish to them. I'm not sure if that's coming over on the camera, but they're really cool looking. So just adding that size 8 bead to the one before it by going through so they hug like that. And last one. I'm going to tighten my tail really quick and see if that helps with the beads just kind of popping in place. And there they are. Okay, so that's rounds 1 and part of round 2. And now I want to go back through and add an 8 in between each one of these last ones. And I think I'll switch to yellow. Get the yellow one in there. But again, you can work these two colors, the colors B and C, as one solid color. And you will get what I did here, which is I worked B's and C as the same color. So I could just have one solid stripe for each of the rounds. And that's handy if you want to make a rainbow. So just playing with those colors, if you made that the same one. It's either way will look really cute. And so I'm just changing up the colors so that every step stands out from the one before it so that it looks different. There's that. I'm going to reinforce it. I'm going to go back through this first row. And then I'm going to go back through this one. And again, this reinforcing that I'm doing is optional. And depending on whether or not you do it, you'll end up in a different direction. So you could end up building this way versus building that way, depending on if you were to, sit, for example, stay here and start adding, you could do all of that and it would work. But if you feel like it needs the extra pass, by all means, go through those beads one more time and they should tighten up just a little bit. I like doing that, if you know, personally, it just helps me with staying on track with where I am. So here's my new 8 bead, size 8 OC bead. I'm just going to tighten that so it hugs the one before it. Same thing. And I'm working kind of in a back direction from where I was before. So I'm picking up the bead and going in the other direction. But square stitch works both ways, headed that way or headed back. So don't worry if when you're working it, you find that you're going, you know, from the bottom of the bead up or from the top down, it's going to work both ways. I ran into that as kind of a challenge when I was diagramming because I would make it one time and then I would do the diagram, and sometimes when I'm diagramming them, I'll actually work a piece next to it, stop and do the steps before I go on. And every time I was doing that, I was like, why am I on the other side? My thread was not positioned in the same spot as it was when I did the diagram. And that's because for some reason I decided, well, I need to reinforce it. And when you do change that location, you can change where you are, but it'll still work. So don't worry if that happens to you and you're like, oh no, I'm supposed to be up over here or over there. It's totally fine. Another magic of the stitch. I'm going a little faster, but let me know if this is at all confusing. It's the same thing we did before with, you know, with the bugle bead center. And there we go. So you've got that next little round on. And then I'm going to go through all these. I notice when I'm working with the camera that my tension is either tighter or looser than when I'm working on my other desk. So how crazy is that your desk would change your tension? I wonder if it's also maybe the camera position, but definitely my tension's a lot tighter for this one than the last one. But so there's that. I'm going to go ahead and turn, go through this size 8 bead. And then I'm just going to pick up a bunch of 11s and put them in between each one of those, same as before. Should get that same look that we did with the bugle. And then I also noticed that this is the opaque. You get a much more stunning look with the opaques than on the other one. I did like a silver lined interior. Sorry, this bead is turned around. There we go. Oh, I pierced my thread. Sorry guys, I gotta pull my thread out. It's like, why won't that go flat? It's because I actually stitched through the Wildfire. I didn't think you could do that. I found a way. Here we go. Yeah, it actually went through it. I know that probably isn't visible on the camera, but I stitched straight through right there. See, it's there, you can see it. I went right through it. I knew my tension was tight, but I didn't know it was that tight. Okay, I'm just rethreading over here. Okay, should work now. Yeah, how did I do that? That is crazy. One more and it gets to the where we're doing something different. All right, so there's our seashell again. And that by itself is just super cute. Just string that. But what we're going to do is turn it into the earring. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and, well, what we did is we just added all those. I'm going to go back through all of these. Because there's something I want to do over on this other this outer shell here before I go on and add fringe. I want to add my ear wire to the top. So I need to get there. And so as part of the reinforcing step, I'm just going to keep going through row 2. Go through row 2 as much as I can. It's really tight. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to go through the first few. I want to get to these middle ones that are my center. So my center point, I have an 8/0 center point, and then I have these 2 10/0, which we should see 3 on the other side of them. So I want to join those 2 11/0. Sorry if I said 10/0, these are 11s. I want to join these 2 11/0 with 1 11. And optionally at this step, I'm going to show you over here what I mean. We're going to go through here and we're going to come out, add 2 11s, and then come down through that one and keep traveling and then start building our fringe. But right here, you could put your ear wire on now if you wanted to, instead of having to add it later. You can do both. Either way will work. I think in the first one, I didn't and came back and tried to add my ear wire and had to kind of work around trying to find the thread. You'll have, by the time we're finished, you'll have 2 passes through this connection. So it can actually be a little easier to put the ear wire on at this step. I'm going to go through it. Almost there. It's so quiet. I assume everyone's just, they're just, you all are with me. There's the 4th one. So I went through the 8, the 11, the 8, 11, 8, 11, and the 8 and the 11. So I'm exiting from the 4th size 11 seed bead that we strung on that little shell. Just exiting from the 4th one there. And now I'm going to add 2 11s, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just put 1 11 and get my ear wire so that it'll sit in between the 2. And my ear wires, I was thinking it might be fun to use one of the lever backs. I didn't try this on the other, but I wished I had, because of where they're where the separation is on them. So on these, the open is back here. So when I stitch through it, it's not going to pull through. And that's what the appeal for me of using that. So I'm going to go through that one. And it was something I had just thought of. My original design, of course, has these in there. They're fine. They work too. And those ear wires are the ones in the original handout. So I added another 11 after going through the ear wire. Sorry, I went off camera there, guys. So there's the 11, the ear wire, the 11. I jumped over the 8 and went through the 11 that's on the other side of it. And for now, that's going to be the only pass through, but we're going to build fringe and come back through it. When we get to this other side on the trip back up to weave in, we'll reinforce that spot. And so I'm going to just keep going down, and I'm going to get as far as I can building our fringe. Here we go. I find it actually helps just to go through the 8. I want to get through the 8 and the 11, but it's that little turning that's making it really tough to get through. There we go. Almost to the end. I feel like this design has a lot of just traveling around and weaving in. Okay. So there's this, what looks like a really cool seashell. I mean, even this by itself, I'm liking that. This little shell on an ear wire. But let's put the fringe on it. So this is, of course, your design discretion, whatever you like. I diagrammed out what I did on the apricot version, just because if anybody liked the weird way that I strung the colors, you can see how I did it there. But this is something you can change to be the way that you like it and with any colors you want. So I started with 11 to kind of keep with the convention here. We've got 8, 11, 8, 11. So I went ahead and started with another 11. And then I just built out from the color I'm emerging from, which in this case for me is red. So spacing the 8-0 beads with 11-0 beads. Going for a total of 4 of the 8-0s. And that was the pattern that I just came up with. It wasn't, you know, just, it looked good, I thought. But it's not something you have to do. You can change it up. So here's the 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to get another 11. Switching colors. I put 4 spaced with an 11. There's 2. Here's my 3rd. Here's my 4th one, changing colors again. 2. Here's 3 and 4. Bring that on. Bring on one more 11. That's going to be my turning 11. And I'm not going to connect it to the bottom yet because I'm going to use it as the way to hold the thread. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn and come back up through all those beads, skipping that last 11 that we added. And be careful here that you go through all of them. I often will skip an 11 by accident and then later notice it and see my thread. So right here at this step, I'm just going to look and see that I went through everything. And if it looks good, go ahead and start pulling your needle through. I went through what was the last 8/0 in our shell. I've started calling it a shell now. Here's
Danielle,
the bottom. Oh, go ahead.
Sharon just mentioned she always misses a bead doing this.
Yeah, me too. Every time. And I'll go tear her earrings apart for it because you will not see it until you photograph. It's like one of Murphy's laws. It's, yeah, for real. The struggle is real. I've got the 11/0 bead. I'm going to pinch it. So this is one of my little tricks for fringe, and it works most of the time for getting the tension right for the strands because you want it to be flowy but not loose. And I am working with Wildfire, so Wildfire is going to naturally not flow as much. If you work this with Nymo, it would be a lot flowier. But so here's the 11/0. I'm just going to pinch it, and I'm just going to pull this thread here and tighten it up. And when you get to a point where your fingernail is kind of blocking the extra, just gently pull. And then hold it up and look at it and see what you think. That's about as flowy as it's going to get. It's not very long, and it's also using Wildfire. So we've got, you know, the 0.012 thickness in there at that point. But I feel like I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn. So from where I am here, I'm going through the, that was the last red 8 here on the edge of my shell. And I'm going to turn and come down through the blue one. Just the next one in the line. And then just test your tension again. If this motion here tightened it up to where it starts to do this little wanding in, just give it another little, there you go. And now we'll string the next one. We're doing okay on time, so I think I can just keep going with the stringing. And I'm going wild with the colors now. I'm not even sticking to the color pattern here. I just thought that would be cool to bring in the turquoise there because it's kind of following the turquoise. There's my 3rd and my 4th color. And so in the original here, I just started bringing in the one that was before it as the 2nd and then the 3rd and bringing it down. For this one, I feel like doing something different. I'm thinking maybe bringing the red back. There's the 4th one and an extra 11. I'm going to need to get more 11s out. That's the last of them there. Where do I put those? This is one of my favorite colors, is this beautiful turquoise. And now how about yellow? And here's my turning bead, that extra 11 at the end. Bringing that down. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. And now very carefully, I'm just going to try to get back through all those beads. And once you get through them, if you can get through that bead that's above in the next row, I'm having trouble maneuvering that. So I'm going to go ahead and come through. And then just try to get through it like this. I'm being careful not to puncture thread, and especially not to move my transition thread that came from this bead to that one. It's really easy to puncture that at this step. And again, I'm pinching that bottom 11-0. It's over here off camera right now, but let me try to bring it back on. There. And that tail thread's just a little bit in the way. Let's get that over here. Okay, so I'm going to pinch this 11 and pull on the working thread until I get to like right about there. And this is leaving a little space, which I can just gently tuck in. And then again, making sure I didn't change the tension of my last one. And if you're feeling good about that, you can go ahead and turn and go to the next one. So let's see here. I'm going to turn and go through this purple. So we're just, you know, the same thing with like all fringe designs where you come up through one and then you turn in your base row. And so right now I'm feeling like I need to do something about my tail. It's gonna get really confusing because it's gonna block us from being able to see the next few steps. So let me grab another needle. Okay. I'm not sure what this is. It was just a random needle in my stash, but it's gonna work. And I'm gonna bring it back up. All right. Get through one more if I can. I feel like weaving in takes longer than the whole design itself. Or maybe it just feels like it because it's not the most interesting part of the creating. I'm kind of just turning wherever it lets me at this point. Maybe we'll go this way. I'm listening to the beads. They told me they did not want me to turn there. So I turned somewhere else. Here we go. Actually, it's not going to let me turn there either. So I'm going to come out here. Bring it up this way. And so here's one opportunity to reinforce the top. You don't need to do the reinforcement with your tail because we're going to have lots left for here. But if you wanted to, you could weave up with this strand and reinforce that way too. I'm just going to turn it, come back down. And I'll probably just trim it down here. Made it. There we go. Wow, this is some tight tension. Okay, so that one's good. I'm going to trim that. And that was just my tail. I was just getting rid of it because it was really getting in the way there. It's going to make it a lot easier to see things too. Okay, tail gone. Yay. So now I'm just going to continue on making more fringe, and your center one here is going to hang a little lower than the ones on the side. Just unless you change your counts, that's probably what'll happen because it's coming down like that. So I'm going to go purple. Let's get an 11-0. Oh, and I did make a mistake. I've just seen, actually, I don't want to pull it out over that, but I would have liked to have put an 11-0 in between the 8 that comes out of the base and this one. I had missed putting an 11-0 there. That's going to bug me. You guys have no idea. I have to fix that. I will fix it. but going on from here, got the 11, and then I'm gonna do 4 of these 8s in the purple color. That's kind of what I did on the apricot version, is I just kind of pulled whatever color of my rainbow here. I just pulled it down into the fringe for the first 4. And then just varied the order of the next colors based on where they were in the former chain. And that's all diagrammed here if you liked it. Okay, so I'm going to switch now to, I'll switch to yellow. And then I just need 4 more, and I'm gonna go with this blue. The apricot mix I used on these earrings, it actually only has 3 colors in it, the silver, the copper, and the root beer. But right now I've got 4 colors that I've got going. So it is a little different. There's my turning bead, going back through all of these. I'm gonna try not to miss one. Wow, look at that, I got through it. And we're gonna go through that whole next 5 purple beads. So I went ahead and just stuck with, it let me go through those too. But before I get any further, I wanna do my little tension pull there. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I get really picky about my fringe. I want them to be, just perfect. And then sometimes I'll, go back at the end and actually put extra strands in if I feel like one of them is too loose. But too tight is also really kind of annoying. Okay, and so how are we doing? We're doing good on time. From here, would you guys like me to finish the earring? Just keep going. That's a repeat of in reverse what we did there. You can go ahead and, yeah, I did. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I was worried I forgot my 11, but I got it. I'm trying to decide, should I copy my mistake on this side or take it apart later? Votes and comments. We'll see what I do. I don't know. Because I'm gonna have to make it done. What's that?
Make me laugh, because those of us who love collage are like, just keep going. And those of us who are not going to sleep knowing there's a bead out of place are gonna match it. Sharon, you and I, we're just going to keep going, right? I think Pat's going to pull out and match.
Yeah, I'm so torn. I'm going to keep going for this one, just because. But I got to decide if I'm copying the mistake. I'm going to copy the mistake. So at least this one.
Yep. Cindy says copy the boo-boo and call it a design choice.
There we go. That's what I'm doing. Great call, Cindy. How many I got there? There's 3. And I got a 4th one here. Okay. 4 and 4 and 4. Got the extra turning bead here. Bring that down. Just gonna come back through all of those. All right. Pinching that turning bead, and then just gonna go ahead and do that pull thing again. They're looking good. They're pretty flowy. Another thought I was having about when you're working with these, if I have this kind of like a thought that the fringe, I really want Nymo, but up here for the structure, I want the Wildfire. What if I built it with Wildfire up here and then just wove in some Nymo to do the fringe? It's another thought that could work. And I like to do a lot of fringe designs that start with, you know, a herringbone bib instead of brick stitch. But herringbone, you really need a thread with some structure to it. So I end up using something thicker and then weaving in a strand of 9 mode to make it the fringe flowy. This one does not want to go through. It's basically told me no. There we go. I think it's going to work. What I did there is I just kind of spun it. And then sometimes to get through a bead that's really tight, going the opposite direction through the bead before it and then just doing that little push turn thing, that sometimes works. Okay, so from here, I'm going to copy my mistake from the other side. I'm not going to add an 11, just going straight to the 8. Okay, so there's those 4. Yeah, that looks good. So here's 11s and then 4 of the next color. Is that the color I did? No, I did red. Need the red. Okay, so there's those 4. And then yellow. I hope you guys aren't bored because this is probably something I know you guys have all seen this stuff before, making the fringe.
Danielle, we were chatting in the sidebar how relaxing it is to watch you work.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad.
So no, we're not bored.
But definitely divert me if there's something you want to see or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because these are all
yeah, you're showing us a couple of really great things to avoid doing and some really great tips. I'm just reading from the sidebar. Cindy probably would have switched threads because she doesn't like a stiffer fringe. So at least now she can see it in action and make the change before she does the fringe.
Yeah, I am wishing I did that. I think that would have been a good move. But I can say that the ones that I've been wearing, the apricot ones, they kind of grew on me as far as how their fringe has some structure to them. So they kind of stay put a little bit. I don't know. I'm torn. So definitely try all those things and see which one you like because it might be different. I end up going through the yellow one here. I hadn't intended to, so I'm going to go back through it again, or I might just try to do my turn 1 up.
Danielle, if we had a whole Saturday with you and this workshop continued, do you think that you would play around with filling the gap under the round?
Yeah, I actually kind of started working on that and I might do another class. What I was thinking about for that is you would basically need to create a laddered row of probably 2, maybe 3 beads. And then from the laddered row, so how that would look is, and I haven't decided between 2 or 3 yet, but say you would ladder stitch those, right? Ladder stitch them flat so that you have something coming down because you need an open, to build fringe down from. So say you've got those laddered, then come up like a rainbow from there and build your top beads. I mean, maybe even 4. I'm not sure because keeping in mind you'd want to have enough structure for 5 beads coming up this way, right? And when you first do that, this thing's going to drive you nuts because it's going to be moving around on you while you stitch, and it's going to collapse as you're doing the build up here. So at the very end, you'd come down, flatten it out, and I haven't gotten this far yet, but it would, once you got your fringe on, it would stay crescent. I don't know if that made any sense, but that was one of the ways I thought of where the challenge being is that you do need a downward facing bead. Like if you were to start it like this and just do the whole circle, you'd be building off a fringe off of a bead that's through holes going this way, but you want your fringe to go that way. So the only way around that I've at the moment come up with, there might be a better way, was to ladder these and then build your rainbow here. And then just
or Sharon's recommending, or you could have probably added them at the beginning. There might be a way of doing that.
You mean walk me through that? I didn't quite so add
on the other side. If you would have surrounded that bead to begin with, then we would have had something to work off of.
Oh, so kind of like a bead on a bead. So maybe build a thread bridge on it and then brick stitch these to the bottom.
So many options.
That would work too. That would absolutely work.
At
Yeah,
some point, we're going to need a class that's just, let's make Danielle design on the spot class.
I'll do it. Those are not as high pressure as I thought they would be, because I just did my a first one, and I thought I was going to be really stressed out. Actually, I had a really good time because there's no pressure. You may not actually produce anything. That's the disclaimer. Like, you might just come up with a bunch of stuff that you're like, meh. But it's still fun, and there's lots of laughs because you just do crazy stuff and everybody's laughing, and so I'm game if you guys are. I think it would be good.
So Danielle, I interrupted you. You have one more fringe left.
One more? Yeah, I can just throw that one on really quick.
I think everybody always wants to see you finish. What is your final finishing recommendation?
Yeah, and I find that at the end of class, I always have all these unfinished ones, and then they sit there sad waiting for me to finish them. But then I go on to the next thing I gotta do, and so it's really cool to finish it now. Although with earrings, you end up with one ear wonders, right? Oh, I was supposed to do yellow there. Sorry. Oops. Okay, so there's 4 yellow and I need 4 purple. I'm good. Another thought I was having about fringe is if you make them longer, then the advantage of Wildfire is that it's stronger. So a longer fringe, it might actually support the weight of a longer fringe. I'm not sure if that's making sense totally, but when the fringe starts to weigh a lot, it'll stretch your thread over time. The Wildfire won't stretch. So if you're gonna make them really long, like crazy long, building them with the Wildfire and letting them be a little bit tight at first might actually give it some life. Nymo stretches on me a lot. I'm still debating in my head the merits of Wildfire for fringe. And then for those of you that are in Toronto, you can go get good thread from the outlet, which is really cool. I like that. All right, so I'm going to go through this one. And almost done. There's that last little fringy guy on there. I like that. It came out really nice. It would be fun to see these with different bead sizes. Gosh, like if you did some 11s, well, what I was thinking is 11s and then it's some 8s and then 11s, and the fringe would kind of be like different sizes as you go down. That would be really neat looking. So what I'm doing now is I'm just traveling up, and as I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I don't go super crazy with tension, and it's going to be hard to resist because I'm trying to get through some tight beads. So after every time I travel, I'm going to lay it back down and then just look at it and being really picky about it. And try to get through as many of these as I can. Still liking it. Okay, so now I'm located right now in the spot where I jumped out. So originally earlier I jumped out of that 11, and then I went through these 2 new 11s here and put the ear wire on. So this is that chance to reinforce that I was mentioning, where we get a chance to go through one more time. And if you felt like it needed another one, you could do a turn. So going through the 11th, the ear wire, going through the next 11. And then I'm going to go through this one, the 11 that's in my circle. And it let me go through the next 2 beads. I was able to get through my 8 and even the 11 after that. But you could, if you wanted to, you could come out of this 8, go back through this 8 in this direction, this one, and this one, come back up, go through this one, and then reinforce that one more time if you wanted to. That's a big square stitch. Just looping around there. But it's not a heavy earring. I'm using Wildfire. I've got 2 passes through it. And truth be told, that's all I did with these because it was fine. It worked out really good. And I've been wearing these for a couple of days and they have not shown any signs of weakness there. So I feel like that's okay. But if you wanted to do a 3rd pass, that is totally a great option too. But for now, I'm just going to weave in. And it's getting to be where weaving in is super hard for me because it's super tight. So I might show a knotting option for the knotters. And with the disclaimer that knotting, make sure your fringe tension is good before you do your knot. Mine seems okay. And this is how much thread I have left. After having 60 inches, I built the whole earring and I've still got that much thread. So you could do less than 60. Maybe even like 50 would be okay. I don't mind having extra because it helps me. So if you were going to knot, here's a good place to half hitch. Up here, I'm coming out of an 11. And if I go underneath, so I'm going to bring my needle through. What I'm capturing here is the thread that's running through this one. So just again, I'm going to go underneath from where I am here. And then pulling a loop. Go through our loop. And what I find happens when I do those half hitches on these kind of outer ones is that it will just kind of snap into the bead. But if that doesn't happen for you, bravely, but not too crazily, just give it a little tug like you saw me do that. And it should pop in there. And if it doesn't, if you get to where the knot is still showing, there's another chance to hide it. You go through the next 8-0 and pull, and it should pop into the 8-0. But for me, it actually just did that on its own because there's a height differential between these beads, and that knot's going to sink to the lowest point, which is going to be shorter than your 8-0 bead. So that's a good spot to knot if you're going to do that. And then always, you know, when you knot, you always, of course, want to go through a few more beads after you've knotted so it does not unravel on you, and maybe make 2 knots if you want. I'm going to go ahead and trim it. And so here's the front. With a lever back, you have a front and a back, but it is reversible. One side. And then, yeah, I loved the idea that Sharon had about putting the brick stitched. We did that once. We did, it was called a bead on a bead sun earrings. We did that like a spring, I feel like it was this year, but I'm sorry, last year that we did that, 2021. But how we did that is we put loops of thread onto the bead, and you could do that just on one side. And then you could brick stitch. I think 380 would be the right number. Sorry, I'm off camera. 380 here, brick stitched onto the thread bridge. I'm going to show you, actually. I'm going to do it. You can even do it after you built the earring. So there's, let's go through. Okay, so there's one thread bridge, right? Can make another one. Maybe easier to do before you have your fringe on, I would say. But so you've got that little thread bridge there. Let's pick up 2 size 8s. Go under it. It's tricky to get under both, but once you do, it tightens it up a lot. And coming up through that second 8-0 that we added. So this is just brick stitch with a lot of fringe to dodge. So yeah, I'd recommend doing it before you put your fringe on. It's also looking like maybe we might be able to do 4. Let's see what happens. Let's grab another one. Yes. Yeah, let's get another one. That was 3. All right. So that looks like I'll be able to get 4 strands of fringe. And they would really make it fan out. Like, it would look really cool. So 4 strands coming out of each of these. And then when you get, say you built one, came back up, built the next one, when you get back here, go through that bead again and come over here. Maybe not with this guy, maybe not, I'm not sure. Just see how your tension is working to get it to center is what you might run into is getting it to center. It would help to have a knot here when you travel, and then come back up through here.
Danielle, we've sent you down a whole new road.
I know. Well, I needed to see if it would work because I feel like that's the answer there. See, now you have a place to build fringe.
I really hope someone tries it.
I might finish it like
Danielle,
that.
you're just on time. So
Yay.
I wanted to make sure you got a chance to just stretch and say hello to everybody or goodbye.
Yeah.
This certainly flew.
It did. It really flew. It always does because you guys are a fun group and you let me play, which is cool. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the next one. And next Friday we have the sapphire lace, which is for this crowd is going to be super easy. It's just a really fun, like little stitched. It's this one here. It's just a little like crochet. The original concept that we sprung this from was called crochet with beads, and it's not crochet. It's actually right angle weave again, kind of the same thing we were doing in our class yesterday. But this one has the added little star points on it. And this is super quick and it's a fun to ombre. And so I'll talk a little bit about colors and stuff. So that's next Friday. I believe that's March 4th, if I have the dates right. I can't believe it's March. I really can't believe February is almost over. This whole year is just flying. It's so great to see you guys. I'm going to turn on my gallery view just really quick so I can see everyone. There we go. I can see Cindy and Sharon and Valerie and Pat. I see Paula. Hi, Paula. And hi, everybody else who's here. And thank you so much for joining. Are there any other questions for me? I'm happy to answer them. We've got a few. I'm going to see if the chat works here.
Danielle, I think you're great.
Am I good? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And many thanks for the extra project.
Oh, always. Yeah. For these classes, I always try to do a little something extra. So there'll be another one next time. Oh, the one we're doing after this is the chenille rope. So yeah, we go from the sapphire lace class next Friday, and then the Friday after that's another one of our workshops. So that one is going to be a really cool, like another rope design, but in a round. So chenille in the round. Super fun. Okay, so I'll see you guys next week, and please have a great weekend and happy beading and wishing you lots of creativity. Bye, guys.